Hi, Year 7, another week's worth of lessons. You might notice that there's something new behind me, a bit like Joe Wicks, like spot the difference. I've got a blackboard behind me. Only don't worry, I'm not going to teach you lessons from it. It's got all my meal plans for what I'm going to eat over the next couple of weeks. So you might be able to see what I've been eating whilst I'm teaching you. Anyway, on with today's lesson. The first thing you're going to do is go into the team, like always, and click on our team, which is History Year 7. Once it's loaded, you'll see that there's lots of stuff going on here because I put lots of posts up today. This isn't your assignment, History Week 2 Assignment 4. You'll see you've already done that. I'm just giving you an update on it because a couple of you told me that the videos didn't work. So there's the links to the videos for Lesson 4. That's last week's lesson posted there at the bottom. If you scroll up slightly, then you'll see History Week 3 Lesson 5, and you can click on View Assignment. Alternatively, you can just go to Assignments, and when it loads, you'll see that all of your assignments are there. And here's the most recent one at the bottom, History Week 3, Lesson 5. And in actual fact, that's the only lesson I'm going to give to you this week because I don't want us to go on to the next task yet because that's a new cycle. So we'll do that next week. So if you click on, sorry, I've clicked on the wrong thing there. I should have clicked on student view. So I'm just going to go back if it will let me. There we go. And I'm going to click on History Week 3, Lesson 5 again. That's the assignment you're working on. And I'm going to click on Student View. If you go into that Student View, then you'll see that it looks like this. There are no videos and things that you need to watch for this lesson this week, so you don't need to worry about that. I've given you really detailed instructions here about how you are meant to edit this document, how you can hand it in, etc. But again, as before, if you aren't sure and you're unclear, then you need to watch the videos. Both of them I posted at the bottom here before you email me because they give you all the instructions for how to access your work and hand it in, etc. I'm going to go ahead and click on the assignment. And like always, it will load like this. Now, you've got a couple of options at this point, as you know, but you must click on Edit Document. Otherwise, it's not going to let me do anything to this document. I can't change anything, okay? So click on Edit Document, and you've got a choice, edit in desktop browser, so do it on your own computer, save it, hand it in, watch the video, you're not sure how to do that. You could print it off by clicking print, do it by hand, take a picture, save it to your computer, upload it to Microsoft Teams, hand it in. Again, I'm not going to tell you how to do that because there's a video, go and watch it. Or the easiest option, which is just to click Edit Document and then Edit in Browser. Now, like I've told you before, it will move things around. I've done a couple of things this time, like taking photos and stuff, which hopefully will minimize that, but it's going to do it a little bit. So the first thing to do, as you know, is go through the Quizlet questions. How many heretics? If you're not sure what that means, go and look back at your knowledge organizer for cycle C. I don't know why it's sending me that. We'll just do that very quick. There we go. Go back and look at your knowledge organizer for cycle 3 if you're not sure what the word heretic means. Cycle C even, sorry, it's in there. So how many heretics were executed during Elizabeth I's reign? Go back and look at last lesson for that as well. And define the key term, heretic. And then once you've done that, you're putting those events in order. Pause the video here, complete those tasks now. So after telling you to go and look at your knowledge organizer for the word heretic, I realized that it's not actually there. However, if you go back and look at the earlier lessons, you did this lesson a couple of weeks ago, was Mary the First Bloody. We did actually have a think about what that word heretic means. And it's actually quite similar to an extremist, a person who has extreme views or ideas and often uses violence or illegal actions to promote their views. A heretic is very similar to that, with the addition that someone else might think that a heretic goes against their religion. So, for example, Mary the First thought that Protestants were heretics because they were not Catholic. Mary the First thought Protestants were heretics because they were not Catholic. Okay? So someone who goes against the religion. So, there we go. How many heretics were executed during Elizabeth's reign? You can get that from the previous lesson. You can find that yourself. And a key term for the word heretic I've just said. The next task asks you to put those in order. It should be in this order. Medieval England is from 1066 until 1485. So that's letter A. Stuart Britain is from roughly 1603 until 1714. Tudor England from roughly 1485 until 1603. And Anglo-Saxon England from roughly 440 AD until 1066 AD. And those events in order: William I is crowned king on the 25th of December, 1066, Christmas Day, 1066. The Peasants' Revolt was in 1381. Henry VIII, and I'm actually going to go and check that myself because Mr. Jones has forgot. Thanks, Google. Henry VIII married Catherine of Aragon in 1509, and Galileo invented the telescope in the 17th century, in the 1600s. Okay, let's scroll down. So in this lesson, we're thinking about, first of all, something called propaganda. But before we can do that, we're going to think about something that's maybe a bit more familiar to you, an advert. So in image 1 is an advert. It's an advert for Coca-Cola. Might this image make you want to buy Coca-Cola? If yes, explain why it would. If no, explain why it wouldn't. Really simple. And if you finish that, there's a challenge task underneath too. How might the effect of this poster be reduced if it told you the bad things about Coca-Cola too? So answer those questions, thanks. Yes or no, and explain why. And if you finish the challenge question, should take you about a minute and a half, 2 minutes. Pause the video here, do that now. So this image of Coca-Cola is an advert. An advert is different to propaganda. An advert is something that encourages you to purchase something, but it not in an aggressive way. And it's going to give you still a one-sided view. So an advert is something that encourages you to buy something. It gives you a one-sided view. Propaganda is something slightly different. It's getting people to believe an idea by giving them a one-sided view. And often that's linked to politics. I now need you to look at source A. Now, source A, as you can see, was drawn in 1563, 5 years after Elizabeth I. Remember, the Tudor kings and queens go Henry VII, Henry VIII, Edward VI, Mary I, Catholic, and Elizabeth I, Protestant, roughly. What I need you to do is look at this picture made when Elizabeth I is queen. And it tells you that the artist was a Protestant supporter of Elizabeth called John Fox. So he's a Protestant, not a Catholic, and he supports Elizabeth. What I need you to do is analyze this image, and around the outside, you're going to type anything that you see that shocks you. For example, if I look at the image here, I can see right in the middle a baby kind of shooting out, and these look like flames. So I'm going to write here a baby bursting out of the flames. I think as well this baby has come from this belly, because if I look, this belly's burst open. You might think this is a man. It's not. Women would have had their head shaved before they were burnt on the stake. So this is definitely a woman. So clearly this is a pregnant woman and the baby's bursting out as she's burnt. That's something that shocks me. So what I'm now going to do is type what I think I can see. Baby bursting out of the flames, possibly bursting out of the belly of a pregnant woman whilst she is burnt at the stake. Okay? Oops, I'm just going to add my hyphens. Okay, so that's what you're doing. Should take you 5 minutes, probably. Look really close at the image, pause the video here, complete that task now. Okay, so now I need you to think for a second. Why is a supporter of Elizabeth drawing such a shocking image of an event from Mary I's reign? Remember, Elizabeth is queen after Mary I. Mary I, Catholic. Elizabeth I changes the country back to Protestant. Secondly, is this propaganda? Now remind yourself of the definition of what propaganda means at the start of the lesson if you need to. And what might John Fox have wanted us to think about Mary I here? Pause the video here and complete those 3 tasks now. It should take you about 5 minutes. Okay, next job, you need to read the text about Elizabeth I. Pause the video here, do that now. Okay, there's some tricky words and terms in there, so I'm going to read it to you. Elizabeth I became queen in 1558 after Mary I died. Despite what we think we know about Mary, she had actually been a popular queen. British people liked her. Elizabeth I had a tough act to follow. Lots of people in England were still Catholic after Henry VIII's Reformation, when he changed England from Catholic to Protestant in the 1530s. Therefore, lots of people were relieved, actually, when Mary I became queen and turned England back into a Catholic country. Many people were not pleased that England would become Protestant again with Elizabeth as queen. So things went back to normal under Mary, and then Elizabeth was changing it again, and some people weren't happy about that. They preferred it, Catholic under Mary. Mary I had also been a strong queen. She had married King Philip II of Spain. Spain was the most powerful country in the world in the 16th century. Yet she had not let Philip become king. Mary ruled as queen alone. This meant England had the benefit of Spain's power and money, yet kept their independence. Mary I was actually the first woman in English history to rule with the full powers of a monarch. No other women had done that before. She, at that point, was the most powerful British woman in our history. English people did not know much about Elizabeth, as she'd lived in prison during Mary I's reign. And what they did know, many didn't like. The daughter of Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's most disliked wife, a Protestant, a woman, Elizabeth needed to convince the English people that she was able to lead England. Elizabeth I and her supporters used propaganda to smear the name of Mary I. Their goal was to convince people that she had been a horrible, tyrannical, that means nasty and vicious, a horrible, tyrannical queen, and that her reign was a terrible time. Source A, that's that picture, gruesome picture we looked at earlier. Lost my place. Source A comes from a book called John Fox's Book of Martyrs, an example of Elizabethan propaganda. Elizabethan propaganda was so good that it not only convinced people in Elizabethan England that Mary I was bloody and Elizabeth I was Gloriana, but most people still think the same today. Her propaganda was that good, Year 7, that she even is fooling us in 2020. Amazing. Is Bloody Mary I a myth created by Elizabeth and her supporters? Is Gloriana a myth too? Okay, what I now need you to do is answer those questions underneath. So you'll see the first one says, explain why Mary I was a popular queen with some people. So I'd go back up to the top, I'd find the passage about that. Well, hold on. Lots of people were relieved when Mary I became queen and turned it back into a Catholic country. So she's popular because she turns Britain back into a Catholic country. 2, they like her because she's strong and who she's married to. He's very powerful. But they also like her because she keeps the independence of our country. So lots of reasons that you could use there. Do questions 2 and 3 now alone. And if you finish, complete the challenge task. Should take you about 4 minutes. Pause the video here. Do that now. Okay, so the last thing I need you to think about, almost the last thing then, is this source again. How far can we trust this source? What I mean by that is, why has this picture been made? What is it that John Fox is trying to tell us? And can we trust it completely? Now, I'm not saying it's not useful. Every source in history is useful, even if it just tells us what someone wants us to think. But for a truthful tale of what actually happened and how bloody Mary actually was, how far can we trust this picture? Think about that question and then answer the question underneath. Pause the video here, do that now. It should take you 2 minutes. Okay, now the next extract is taken from that historian again, Dr. Anna Whitelock. Now you might remember from a previous lesson that she was very negative about Mary, but I've got a level with the year 7. I'd taken out most of what she says. I cheated a little bit. Anna Whitelock is actually a very fond fan of Mary I. She wrote a book about 10 years ago now, about how Mary I was something called a trailblazer, i.e. she was the first to do something really impressive and improved life for many women in Tudor England as a result. Now, this is a tricky passage, so I am going to read it to you. However, if you can read it on your own and complete the task on your own underneath, then pause the video, ignore me, and do that yourself. Skip me reading. Mary I was the Tudor trailblazer. She made it easier for future Tudor women. She was the first to do something. Never before had a queen worn the crown of England. She won the throne against the odds, preserving the Tudor line of succession, making sure there was another Tudor who was king or queen next, Elizabeth I, and establishing precedents for female rule, making it possible for a woman to rule England. Her significance has long been overlooked. Mary I's reign is of course more noted for the burning of nearly 300 men, women and children. While this cannot and should not be removed from accounts of her reign, it is important to consider the wider context and her religious policy more generally. The restoration of Catholicism, turning England back into a Catholic country, was neither inept or backward-looking. Cardinal Reginald Pole, Mary's chief advisor, succeeded in reinstating the papacy and with it the Catholic faith in England. So basically, they managed to get Catholicism back in England. He then launched an effective propaganda campaign through the pulpit and press, in church and through news. As has been recently argued, the most notorious aspect of the reign, the burnings, proved devastatingly effective. So basically, he convinced everybody that what Mary had done ignore me. If Mary had lived, or if she had managed to produce a Catholic heir, a child, there seems little doubt that England would have been successfully re-Catholicized. England would have turned back into a Catholic country forever. And the historical judgment on Mary would have been very different. Mary ruled with the full measure of royal majesty. She had absolute power and achieved much of what she had set out to do. Her reign redefined the contours of the English monarchy. Her reign changed what English kings and queens were like. It made it possible for them to be women. She made it possible for queens to rule as kings and establish the gender-free authority of the crown. Can you work out what she's trying to say about Mary I? Type the numbers of the boxes that you think best describe what she is saying below. And the reason I say boxes is because you might need to type more than one coloured box. Read these 3 coloured boxes, which ones fit with what Anna Whitelock is saying. Pause the video here, complete that task now. So as I mentioned, you should have picked at least 2. In fact, you probably should have picked 3. There is only really one card which Anna Whitelock isn't saying. And hopefully you worked out that it's the blue one. She does not say that Mary deserved to be remembered as Bloody Mary. Why? Because without Mary I, Elizabeth could never have been a successful queen. England, actually I've just noted I've made a mistake. It's 2 are incorrect. So 1, Mary I deserves to be remembered as Bloody Mary, and 3, England would have turned back into a Protestant country if Mary had lived longer. Of course, it would have turned back into a Catholic country. So the correct answers are 2 and 4. Okay, hopefully no more mistakes in this video. Last task. What I need you to do is think about everything you've learned over this whole inquiry about Mary I, and decide how bloody was she. 0 would be not bloody at all. 10 would be 100% bloody. Circle a number. Type your number underneath where it says, type here. And then the last thing that you are going to do is write a tweet like we practiced before, explaining what number you circled and why. In fact, I'll tell a lie, that's not the last thing. You're going to write your tweet, and then on the next page, you're going to answer our inquiry question in a couple of claim paragraphs. How bloody was Bloody Mary? You need to write at least 1 claim paragraph to answer the question, and you can use the sentence starters below, the coloured ones here. Alternatively, you might like to challenge yourself and write more than 1 paragraph, which I'd encourage you to do, in which case you can use those sentence starters if you want to. Don't use them if you don't need to. But your first sentence of each paragraph should read in paragraph 1 on one hand and paragraph 2 on the other hand. And you can type your paragraphs where it says type here underneath. And that's it for this week.